Hello and welcome to Moneylife News and Views. I'm Debashis Basu. Last week, the US President Donald Trump imposed a 25% tariff on select Indian exports and soon escalated it to 50%. The reason? A continued import of Russian oil, among other things. Now, a 50% tariff amounts to punitive sanctions. This is the kind of stuff that you reserve for enemies. It's like an act of war. Unless it is unless this is reversed quickly, it will deal a hard blow to a few traditional exporters to the US, such as garments, leather, gems and jewelry, and shrimps, and so on exports. The Indian political response has been a predictable mix of defiance and chauvinism, claiming to safeguard the welfare of the farmers, laborers, entrepreneurs, industrialists, exporters, and small businesses. But a more revealing set of reactions came from business leaders and officials. Mr. Amitabh Kant, former head of Niti Aayog, he was a chief executive officer, called the tariffs a once in a generation moment, or in Bollywood terms, an Agneepath turning point. Anand Mahindra, chairman of the Mahindra Group, called it a global manthan, conjuring the churning of mythical Amrit from the trade turmoil. They expect a lot of changes to happen. Are such expectations realistic? They're not, for two reasons. One, Mr. Kant is suggesting simplifying bureaucracy, tax structures, example, reduce GST slabs to just two, and reviving the tourism sector. He suggests that no form should exceed half a page and no law should be longer than 2 pages in order to foster entrepreneurship. Why was Mr. Kant, as the head of Niti Aayog, presumably with access to the government's ears, unable to implement such radical ideas is, of course, a mystery and will remain so. Mr. Mahindra advocates a functional single window clearance for investments. He also calls for boosting tourism through faster visa processing and better infrastructure. He wants production-linked incentive schemes to be expanded and import duties on manufacturing inputs to be rationalized to boost competitiveness. All very sensible, but all too familiar. India has heard all of these ideas before. It's not that the government doesn't know. It's not that the government doesn't have any of these ideas. It's something else. With every such suggestion, business leaders are merely highlighting long-standing structural inefficiencies which have continued under every regime and through every so-called crisis. India's outstanding tourism potential is destroyed by filth, lack of individual safety, frequent deadly stampedes, creaking infrastructure, criminal negligence of our historical monuments, rampant illegal construction in which local politicians have vested interests, and of course, very high cost of doing business for small entrepreneurs who live off tourism. None of these can be fixed overnight, not even over years, given the pervasive poor governance from panchayats to the center. If leaders like Anand Mahindra have a real say in making changes on the ground, of course the outcome would be different. They are actually running large corporations and they know what to do. But the government doesn't even want them anywhere near any implementation, and he could have very well possibly have done a lot to fix creaking urban transport, for instance, knowing that he's coming from the transport sector, and which is causing misery for commuting millions every day. But the government does not want any of those solutions. Businessmen are comparing the current situation to the 1991 forex crisis that spurred India's liberalization. There is a widespread belief that reforms in India are only possible during a crisis. Former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, who spearheaded 1991 reforms, he used to encourage that thought. He himself used to say this very often, that we reform only when there is crisis. Hence, reforms are the default expectations of business leaders for every hiccup that India suffers. But there is hardly any instance of economic crisis followed by reforms to draw such a pat conclusion. Quite the opposite. Over the past 30 years, India has had a series of reforms in infrastructure, telecom, capital markets, pension, law, taxation, such as goods and services tax, and any other areas without any crisis. Indeed, the last major crisis, which was the 2008 financial crisis, led to no reforms, only mindless copycat pump priming under the Congress government that quickly led to inflation and eventually a lot of bad loans. Most importantly, have Trump's unhinged tariffs created a crisis for India on the ground? Well, it's going to be a very bad for a lot of people, but not such a crisis for the whole of India. Moody's, the rating agency, says that the steep new US tariffs on Indian exports would only trim GDP growth by around 30 basis points. Other estimates make it 80 basis points. So your 6.5% GDP growth is going to come down to 5.7%. It will lead to pain for small exporters, job losses, but it's not enough to spook investors, rattle markets, or pressure the government to do something. The baseline of Indian reform is this: a series of slow and half hearted measures, all the while ensuring that bureaucratic control and the wheels of corruption remain undisturbed. Accountability remains low, and so is the impact on competitiveness. But there has been one notable change, though, over the years. The Modi regime has been an aggressive tax collector. Gross tax revenues to GDP ratio at 11.7%, when the growth is 6.5%. It's actually near a historic high of 11.9% of 2007-8, in a year in which there was a 9% GDP growth. So whether the economy grows fast or not, the government stake is increasing. You may bemoan the lack of reforms, but the government's intention and implementation is absolutely clear. It has very adeptly pursued its own priorities, imposing and collecting lots of tax, cess, and levies. Highway toll collection will hit 80,000 crore in FY26, an 18% compounded increase from 2018-19. The securities transaction tax is expected to rise from 25,000 crore in FY23 to 69,000 crore budgeted in FY26, a CAGR of 40%. Such huge inflows buy social schemes and capital spending for the government, but it has not led to increased productivity or competitiveness. India doesn't lack ideas, especially those coming from retired bureaucrats and businessmen. But of course, they are very eager to proffer these ideas as if the government is going to listen to them or going to implement them. What the government lacks is intent and the will to implement. There is no political urgency to ease the frictional cost of doing business, reduce the cost of logistics, train a vast army of factory workers, and slash red tape. To be sure, the government can easily reel off a series of schemes for each of these areas, but the undeniable outcome is that manufacturing is stuck at 14% of GDP, India's export competitiveness remains pathetic, and businessmen are routinely complaining about lack of skilled labor and petty bribes and harassment. And not having done any of these changes earlier, when it had a brute parliamentary majority, why and how would the government leap at these fixes now under a coalition government and a much milder economic pressure than we found ourselves in 1991? Good question, right? If you like this, please do share and do subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching.